Hello YouTube. As we know, Dead by Daylight is a huge game with many licensed and original horror legends that the talented developers have designed over the years. But there are countless more designed by someone equally as passionate and talented. You! That's right. Online you'll find countless fan concepts for killers, survivors, perks, and even full chapters for Dead by Daylight. Some licensed and some original, but all created by the wonderfully talented and creative community. And I thought it would be nice to shine a spotlight on some of these fan concepts and give them some feedback and recognition. So please join me as I review some Dead by Daylight fan concepts. Let's begin. Alright, so this Dead by Daylight fan chapter concept comes from a user called Meidiot, and it's a Ao Oni chapter. Now if you don't know what Ao Oni is, I don't blame you, I didn't until like 20 minutes ago. But basically, Ao Oni is a RPG maker type horror game, and it basically got very popular in Japan, really popular in Japan. It blew up. Japan couldn't get enough of it. They was just like, oh my god, I just simply love this little raisin demon. Oh, and because it blew up, it not only got, a lot of sequels and stuff, because, you gotta strike all that iron in his heart and stuff. And this iron was sizzling over in Japan. But it also got like 2 novels, it got a manga adaptation, and crazily enough, it got 2 feature-length films. I don't know who saw this thing and thought, yep, the silver screen beckons for the likes of you. But that's what they did. And Meidiot took it upon himself to create a chapter based around this little demon dude. And that's what I'm going to be reviewing today. But not only did he just write it out in a big format like this, in this big essay that most people do when it comes to making fan concepts for Dead by Daylight, he also did this little number. Look at this. What a beautiful man. Do you know how much I appreciate this? Not only is this easier and simpler to understand and look at, he's drawn like little pictures, and he's not going to win any art contest, Bob Ross can sleep easy. But they do, they do what they're meant to do. They get they help get the idea across, and it's just a nice visual representation to help understand, and it's just so appreciated. It's better to look at, it's easier to read, it's better to understand, it's just so good. So straight from the get-go, 10 out of 10 for presentation. This is beautiful. I can't thank this guy enough. Meidiot, you ain't living up to the name, pal. You genius. Now the little blue freak has all his his bio, his little dating profile right here. I don't really care too much about this stuff. This is all just like whatever. The things I want to concentrate on here is this. Woo! Okay, so instead of being a regular 115 movement killer, he's a 110 movement killer. And not only that, but he's also got a terror radius of 36 meters. That's an extra 4 meters compared to normal survivors. Normally they're between 40 if they're really fast and high mobility, 32 if they're just regular, and 24 if they're like stealth type killers. But this guy is, I don't know, he's breaking the mold a little bit. 36 meters is a bit weird, but what makes it more weird is the fact that he's only 110. So that's a big detriment to him starting off in the game. His power must be really something if he's 110, and he gives people an extra 4 meters of warning. So that's a bit crazy. So let's see, the power, territorial markings. Scribble the surrounding environment in a blue purplish markings, infecting survivors who stand on it for too long. Channel your power on partially infected survivors to transform that player into the owner, and take control of them temporarily, eventually being forced back into the original body and return the survivor to its normal state. Yikes. Okay, so I see a lot of issues and problems and worries with a power like that, but maybe he thought of those concerns as well and he addressed them. This is definitely a complicated and difficult power to implement into a game like Dead by Daylight. So this isn't like Weenie Hut Junior mode. No. He wanted to put himself to the test by making it a chapter. So let's go on. Let's continue. So this is the power, right? Territorial markings. Right, territorial markings. Press and hold the primary power button to begin scribbling a purplish color on and around the nearby area. These are visible to all parties, both the killer and the survivor. Then, the longer you charge, the longer the scribbles, up to a maximum of 8 meters. Okay. You can only have 4 independent scribbles. That is only 4. You can only have 4 so you can only have 4 8-meter circles? What? Okay. On the ground. However, you can grow the size of the scribbles by physically connecting them, though doing this makes them less effective. Wow. I mean, imagine that's like, imagine Trapper with like 4 traps, or Skull Merchant with 4 drones, or the Hag with 4 traps. Only 4 territorial markings? Really? Okay. The following cannot be scribbled on: a 14 meter radius around the hook, A 10-meter radius around the generator. A 10-meter radius around a lit hex. When a hex is lit, all scribbles within that range burn away. And a 10-meter radius of the exit gate levers. Okay, I know what you mean by that, but what you mean to say is the exit gate switches. That's what they're called in the game. That's what they are, that you pull down in order to power up the gate to get out. It's just the right nomenclature. I don't mean to be like, well, technically. But, you know, it's just to make it more understandable for people and less confusing for people. Because I guarantee you some people will be like, exit gate levers, my teammates always leave at the exit gate. But that's not what he's going on about. He's talking about like the switches that you use to pull down. So I know exactly what he means by this, but it's just for anyone else that's ever going to create like a fan concept and stuff like that. They're called exit gate switches. Not to be a bit of a stickler about the rules, but it's for your benefit. I'm just saying. Territorial markings. When a survivor is touching scribbles, they start gaining guestification. I like that word. Guestification. That's what I do when I go into my friend's house. I just get guestification. Anyway, where was I? At a rate of 3% a second, unless these scribbles are stretched over a wide area, in which they gain less percentage based on the total area of the scribbles. Okay. Once at 10% guestification, okay, the icon will slightly be shaded in purple. This effect is not shown to survivors. Not yet. Is this meant to be like an example of like the icon being shaded in purple, because it's barely visible here? So with territorial markings, you basically set down 4 like little traps on the ground in an 8-meter radius, and if the survivors step on them, it allows you to initiate phase 2 of your master plan. But the problem with it is they're only 8 meters long, so it's hardly ever going to affect survivors unless it's in like a straight corridor that they have no like choice but to walk on. But they're not going to be walking on it, they're going to be running past it, so it's not going to be standing on it for that long. And you only get 4 of them, and maps can be pretty big. Like if you get Protham Asylum and you're this guy, where are you going to put those markings that like ever affect survivors ever if you can only put down 4 little 8-meter circles? They're never going to be on it. And the thing is, if you put them all together, they're just going to avoid that area. You know, when like Trapper puts all his traps in basement, you just don't go near basement. You just don't go near the basement, right? It's just going to be a simple matter of that. You just put all your scribblings in one like loop. The survivors are just going to cut their losses and just not go to that loop. They'll just go to the many other loops. But yeah, move on. Let's move on. Guestify. Guestification and Guestify. I like these little phrases. When a valid survivor is available, charge your secondary ability to activate Guestify. Charging duration changes what infected survivors, if multiple, will be chosen. Less Guestification will result in a longer charge being needed. Release at your chosen target to temporarily... Watch out with the images there, because I know this is meant to be temporarily, but you're kind of blocking it, so watch out. Transform them and take control of another version of that tenant. He's got like a nice little demonstration here. Dwight's working on the generator with good old Meg. But Dwight's been licking up too much purple sauce from the floor, so Dwight turns into the tenant.
Hello, motherfucker.
Meg shits her pants because she's about to be beaten to a pulp. And this is his regular body just chilling over here, kind of like Charlotte when Victor detaches. Guestify 2. The duration of the transformation depends on the infected progress, 10% to 99%. 10 to 40 seconds. Alright, I'm just going to go with the maximum just when I'm talking about it, just for convenience. Okay, I don't know how long they would have to be tap dancing on the purple goo for in order to get 99%, in order to turn into them for 40 seconds, but whatever. This ability then goes on cooldown for the duration of the transformation, plus 15 seconds, and cannot be cancelled in any way. So once you transform, you've transformed. You can't go back, and you can't undo your mistakes, kind of like real life. Obviously, this ability cannot be used while transformed, and you can't transform into one survivor and then transform into another. Okay. Survivors who see transformed version of the survivor will result in them being marked for that survivor's HUD specifically. Making contact with another survivor that doesn't know about someone's infection will spread the information. That's a cool concept, but it's kind of just one of those things where a 4-man squad, it doesn't do anything for a 4-man squad, but it just makes solo queue a bit more worse. It's a cool concept though, but yeah. All killer specific actions are possible when transformed. Well, I would expect that to be the case. A transformed survivor is warned 2 to 3 seconds. Oh, okay, so that makes them even worse. So you can't even like get the jump on people because they get warned anyway. Alright. I'm going to get a little drink because I'm kind of posh talking so much, and then I'm going to go over all the issues and problems. Right, now that I've wet my whistle, let's get into it. So, I've already talked about how weak the scribbles are because they're so small and very limited to 4 for some reason. So, you're going to be jumping through a whole lot of loops in order to get this infection meter built up on survivors. That's if you ever do. And then even if you do manage to take control of them for 40 seconds, which is the maximum, it then goes on cooldown for 55 seconds. So that's basically a minute where you're just an M1 killer. But you're even worse than an M1 killer because you're not even a normal movement speed M1 killer. You're a 110 killer, and you have a bigger than normal terror radius. So that's going to make it hard to get the jump on survivors. And even if like you was about to transform on one person and they was working both on a gen, the person that you're going to like turn into, they get warning, so they can just run away from the generator to make you even further behind than normal. That's what I was doing. If I was working on a gen and I was about to be taken control by the Tenant, I would just sprint burst away when it gives me the 2 to 3 second warning. So the Tenant is as far away as possible from the gen and my teammates. But another thing is that when you transform into the survivor, it's still like it doesn't do anything for you. You know what I mean? Like you've just turned the game into a 1v3, I guess. But it's not like turning into a survivor buffs you in any way. You're still slow moving and you're still got a bigger than normal terror radius and you're still super slow. The only thing you've done is took one survivor out of the game for 40 seconds. But even then, they're not out of the game permanently. Because if anything, they're the safest they can possibly be. Because if you've taken control of them, you can't hook them, you can't injure them, you can't damage them. So you've basically made them invulnerable. So even with Skull Merchant currently in the game as the worst killer right now, I think if this version of the killer would come to the game, it would be the weakest killer even over Skull Merchant, because at least Skull Merchant has a smaller terror radius and normal movement speed, who can get stealth every once in a while and like scam people with their drones to get some like information. This guy has nothing, like literally nothing. There's also the detrimental time limit when using his power, because whenever you use his power, you're on the clock, more so than any other killer, because you have to find, catch, down, carry and hook a survivor all within a maximum of 40 seconds before your power ends and you just get yeeted back to where you started. And if that doesn't have you crying in the fetal position, keep in mind, when you go back to your normal body, you leave the survivor in your place. So if you did manage to get an injury on one of the survivors, they can just heal, because basically you just set up a little play date for them. You know what I mean? It's crazy. But that's only the problem for like the killer side. The killer side is that he's very weak. He's very, very weak. But the problem for the survivor side is if they do manage to like get infected, what happens when you take control of them for 40 seconds? Do the survivors see through your eyes because you're controlling them? Because if they're working in a team, they can just constantly call out your location, and you'll never be able to get downs and stuff, and you'll never be able to get the jump on anyone. You know what I mean? You're never going to be able to. But then what's the alternative? That you just like give them a black screen? No one wants to turn on Dead by Daylight and then get the controller taken away from them for 40 seconds. Just because, you know what I mean? That's not fun gameplay for the survivors. So it's going to be not fun for the killers because he's going to be insanely weak. And he's not going to be fun for the survivors because, one, it'll probably be a bit too easy. But even beyond that, it'll probably it just won't be fun. Like, it's not fun to just have your controller switched off for 40 seconds. The only kind of strong thing I can see about his power is that you take control of someone and then you park them right next to you. You wait for the time to run out, and then the second it does, you just attack them. But overall, he's just incredibly weak, and he's just not that fun to play as or against. So that's all like the major problems that I can think of. He definitely needs to be buffed in a lot of areas, and the whole taking control of a survivor thing needs to be thought out a little more. Let's move on to the perks. Alright, sudden surprise. Until spotted by a survivor, your terror radius is 40% smaller, at which point this perk goes on a 30-second cooldown, beginning when chase ends. So when it says until spotted, does that mean with aura readings as well? Because you're technically spotted with aura readings. Yeah, I don't know, it kind of feels like a poor man's monitor and abuse. Like, I'm sure this will be good on some killers in some scenarios, but monitor and abuse is just another somewhat better alternative to this perk. Because monitored abuse is just, it requires less effort and it's more consistent, you know what I mean? You're always going to have monitored abuse, it doesn't have a cooldown. But yeah, I guess it's just another version of another perk. I don't know, it's not bad, I guess. Right, closed casket. Survivors hiding within lockers will have their screen obscured completely after hiding for 2 seconds. When a survivor is grabbed out of the locker and is on their last hook state, you can kill them, you can mori them basically. That's just kind of thrown on at the end for like a whatever, which is cool, whatever, But survivors hiding in the lockers, I don't know what this is meant to be for or help you with or stop you with, because even if their screen goes completely dark when they're hiding in lockers, they can still just hear your terror radius and just wait for your terror radius to go away. Like, besides making head-on stuns a little more difficult, I don't really see the point of this perk. And even then I say it makes them a little more difficult because, again, they can still hear you. They can hear when you step near the locker and then just jump out. It's kind of like Shattered Hope, where it's like a perk to fight against one other survivor perk, but it kind of just makes itself useless in doing so, because you don't know what survivors will have that perk. You don't know, if you'll ever get use out of it, and if they don't have that perk, it's kind of just useless. So yeah. Instinctive Bite. Mark a player as the obsession. What does that mean? I don't get what that means. I don't know what you mean by mark a player as the obsession. What is this, like? Is this Michael Myers when he first released, when his power was to just make obsessions? What is this? I don't know what you mean by mark a player as the obsession. Yeah, I literally don't have a clue what you're trying to implement or imply with that. I'm just going to have to ignore that part. When stunned by the obsession in any way, any survivor that touches you directly will be injured, regardless if you hit them for 14 seconds. This perk then goes on a 25-second cooldown. This perk cooldown activates if you attack during its duration. Yeah, I don't see what the big plan was with this. I don't understand what you was hoping to achieve with a perk like this. The only time I see this being useful is, those situations where the survivor will stun you at a pallet and then they'll vault into you and then vault back out, hoping that you'll whiff. That's the only time I see a perk like this being useful, but that rarely happens. I can't even remember the last time it happened to me. So I just don't understand. The chances of you getting stunned with a pallet and then catching up to the survivor enough to chest bump them in 14 seconds is slim to not gonna happen. I guess you can have an entire build based around it with Spirit Fury and Enduring and stuff, but at that point, why not just put it on Hubris and just sweeten the deal? Not to mention that it only works if it's the obsession stunning you. It's just, I just don't understand what this was meant to be. You're barely ever going to get value from a perk like this. And, the elephant in the room is, if you're close enough to chest bump them in order to injure them, then you're also just close enough to just attack them and just attack them. I guess with this, you'll save some time since there's no weapon wiping animation, but yeah, it's what a weird perk, honestly. Yeah, it's not very good. These perks aren't really that good. Sudden Surprise it's a nice alternative to Monitor and Abuse, I suppose. I could see some killers running that actually, but yeah, the others are just kind of, I don't know what the inspiration was behind them, honestly. But I do like all the art that you've done, especially with the perks. This is nice. I like when people do their own artwork. This is really nice stuff. Let's go into this to see if I've missed a few things. Oh yeah, he's also done I saw them with the corner of my eye. He's also done add-ons, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to review every single add-on, I hope you understand, but I will review the 2 iridescent add-ons, since they're the biggest and bestest add-ons. I want the biggest, I want the best, I want the best you've got to offer. Broken Noose. Survivors killed via sacrifice or by your own hands appear as injured instead of dead. A replica of these survivors wander the maps performing normal survivor actions. These replicas have their aura revealed permanently in purple and allow you to Guestify them with little to no charge required. So they're basically just teleport pads. But what do you mean? This is the most detrimental add-on I've ever read in my entire life. I can't imagine anyone playing this killer with this add-on and winning because of this sentence right here. The survivor wanders the maps performing normal survivor actions. So even after you kill a survivor, this add-on makes that survivor wander the map and fix the gens regardless. Are you out of your mind? Can you imagine losing the game because a survivor you've already killed just popped the last gen? What? And the payoff to this, the payoff for constantly being in a 1v4 is to just be able to teleport every now and again. That's awful, dude. That's like the worst thing ever. Like, what the hell is that? That's like selling your car for gas money. That's like robbing a bank and then turning yourself in for the reward money. That's like finding a winning lottery ticket on the floor and putting it in the fucking lost and found. Why would you do such a thing to yourself? Losing a game can be disheartening sometimes, but can you imagine how it must feel to lose to a fucking corpse? What the fuck? Alright, cut rope ladder. Whenever a generator is completed, it generates 2 spots of scribbles without draining your charge and grows existing scribbles by 20%. Maximum scribble size is increased by 50. That's good. That's a good add-on. That's a good rarity add-on. That would make playing them kind of cool. I mean, it's got a little bit of RNG mixed in with it, because it doesn't really specify where it generates these extra 2 spots of scribbles. It just says generates them without telling you exactly where. But in the endgame, that adds up to 10 extra spots of scribbles. Not to mention that it also makes them bigger. I mean, in the endgame, the map is going to end up looking like a polka dot skirt, but, you know, that's the survivor's problem. All in all, that's a pretty decent add-on compared to the last one, but the last one was like a hate crime, so. This is an add-on only for masochists. But this add-on is actually pretty good. I could see a lot of people running that. That gives you a lot of benefits. That's a good one. These are the perks. Alright, this is like extra information that he didn't add in the slides. Appearance. The Tenant appears a bit goofy and unintimidating, but do not be fooled. It is how it makes itself less threatening to its guests. The Tenant has multiple skins and will borrow the hair of a survivor. So that's not going to work in a... That's a cool feature and that's a cool idea. But in a game like Dead by Daylight, that's not going to work. Because what if... I mean, I guess it's a license, so we won't have that many skins. But you do realise for doing stuff like that, it would need its own different model for each individual survivor. So it's going to need like over 40 models just to put like the hair on its head for each individual survivor. And then there's all the copyright issues of, you know, like if the Tomb Raider license holders or the Castlevania license holders want the survivors to have the hair stuck on this weird goblin creature. But then it's not only that, it's like it's a bigger issue for behavior that every time a new survivor comes out, this guy's going to have to be updated with their hair. So it's just more work on top of more work on top of more work, all for a feature that really doesn't need to exist, as cool as it is, to be fair. So yeah, a killer having its own like little Kirby hats, can, depending on who he's torturing at the time, is a cool idea, but it would just never work in a game like Dead by Daylight, unfortunately. Mori and misc animations. You've only got the Mori. Let's read the Mori. The survivor will roll onto their back to stare at the Tenant in the eyes. Shortly after, the Tenant bites and rips the victim's head clean off. It sounds a bit too similar to Demogorgon, but you know, it's cool for the head to be bitten right off. Alternative movie design. If it's too goofy for and this would have to be like the design of the creature, because this in Dead by Daylight just wouldn't work. But this would work. This is kind of freaky.
Hi, how are you?
I want to thank Meidiot for giving me this concept for me to review. It's a bit underwhelming, it's a bit on the weak side, but it is unique and it's an interesting idea. And as I said, it's not an easy power to implement into Dead by Daylight, so the fact that he tried deserves some props, so you know, hats off for him for that. I like that he took something that's kind of goofy and niche, but still popular and fitting enough to work in Dead by Daylight. And even though I gave it a bit of a glazing at the beginning, I gotta give it a double glazing, just like a double glazing donut. I just love the presentation. It was easy to read, easy to understand, and the visual aid was just very much appreciated. It gave the entire thing an extra little touch of charm. I really liked the little self-art that he did for the perks and stuff. It just gave it that unique little personal touch. It was just so appreciated and just made the whole thing way better. My suggestions to make the concept a little better, my suggestions are: get that mutant Californian raisin into the gym and buff him up a little bit. I really don't see why he needs to be 110 killer while also having a bigger than normal tear radius. I don't understand that. I don't see why he needs that. Make his power do something more than just force one survivor to play fucking Block Blast on their phone for 40 seconds. Currently, you have to put a whole lot of effort, and I mean a whole lot of effort in, for very, very, very little payoff. You know, make the power do something for him. You know, have the power give you something more than just stress. Give him more traps or scribbles or markings or whatever they was called for him to paint around the place. Because only having 4 isn't going to do much. You might as well just give him 4 wet floor signs. That'll be just as good as stopping survivors running around in a tiny area. And you don't seem to mention that they can be manually removed or placed anywhere else. So I can only assume they can't. And you also don't mention that survivors can remove them for you, like Demogorgon's portals. So I can only assume that once you place them, they're there forever, that's it. which is really bad, really bad. Also, that broken noose add-on needs completely reworking. It's so detrimental. All it does is give you an unknown hallucination to teleport to that sends you back after 40 seconds. And worst of all, the noose is broken, so you can't even use it to hang yourself when the already dead survivor pops the last gen and opens the exit gate after healing the rest of the survivors. Just rework that add-on, that's crazy. That's it, that's wow. And speaking of the survivors, more thought needs to go into how taking over them works and what that implies for the survivor. You know, no one likes having all their agency taken away, especially in an online multiplayer game. So I would look into that entire interaction and try to improve it and work upon it a bit more. But that's all I have to say. Any thoughts or anything to say or anything to add about the concept, feel free to leave it in a comment, but please be nice, be respectful. Don't make me come out into that comment section. You knuckleheads won't like it if I have to come out into that comment section. But that's about it. If you have any concepts you would like me to review, let me know in the comments and I'll try and sort something out and I'll try to review it for you. Don't post the entire thing in the comments though. Just let me know that you have a perk or a killer or a survivor or a chapter or something you want me to review, and I'll reach out to you and I'll review it, okay? Don't just bomb the entire comment section with your ideas, okay? Thank you. Again, massive thanks to Meidiot. I'll catch you all next time. Goodbye.